Press play on the Inside Sales Show.
Powered by the Sales IQ Network.
My name is Darryl. I'm your host, and you, my friend, you and I, we're going to go on a journey every single week talking to the industry's most accomplished sales legends as they share with us their tips, their tricks, their techniques, and their tactics to become sales rock stars. You simply need to do what they're doing, and you will achieve similar nirvana. If you like to laugh, you like to be entertained, if you like to go off on tangents and tell stories, you're going to love what you're going to hear next. Sit back, relax, it's going to get real. It's another week in the quarter, another quarter in the half, another half in the year. Wasn't too long ago, was it? If you've been listening regularly, that we were talking about what are you going to do in your second half? Are you ready? What did you learn from Q2? Now we're in Q3, and now we're seriously in Q3. Oh, my goodness. It's probably a good time, candidly, to sit back and reassess what you're doing. Are you having success? Are you happy with your progress? And because Lord knows, if you're listening to this show, you've got all the tools you will ever need, all because of the Inside Sales Show, he says, completely selfishly. One of the things that I remembered years ago that was shared with me when I was, carrying my bag, and I've heard it shared by others since, is how I approached sales. And in those days, for me, it was very much a call reluctance thing for me, speaking personally, is a byproduct, for lack of a better word. It's a byproduct of who we are as people, what we value, what we cherish, what we believe, what we discern to be right and wrong, good and bad. Our morals, our ethics, our integrity, all of this we know defines us, but you may not realize that some of this negatively impacts us, even though it seems like a good thing. So let me give you an example. And if you've heard this before, just, jump forward a minute or two in the show. My mom and my dad taught me several things when I was very young. They taught me that you look a person in the eyes when you meet with them. They taught me that you shake a hand. And you don't just shake a hand like a limp fish. You shake a hand. You make a statement, right? You are conveying confidence. They taught me not to interrupt. They taught me you never interrupt. They taught me to show respect and manners. And when I didn't do any of that, then I was chastised and nurtured, depending on the day and the mood and how hungry they were. And it's funny because when I had my kids, I did the exact same thing. They would shake hands and I would that's not a handshake, do it again. And they would cry and I would say, suck it up. Life isn't fair. I was the nurturing father, as you can tell. And but these are the things that affect me. So how does that come into play? It comes into play because now when I'm on the phone and I'm having to dial for dollars, I don't want to do it because you know why? I'm interrupting them. And I was taught not to interrupt them. And so if I get them on the phone, now I'm even more aware that I'm in interruption. I can hear it in their voice. And then I have performance issues. I can't say anything. I stammer. I stumble. I fall back on awful scripts because for some reason I know those better, despite just listening to the latest piece of training from the rock stars that are out there telling us what to do. My beliefs, what was ingrained in me was impacting me because I was interrupting them. Now, fast forward many years. I am now older. Some would say much older. I have the white hair to prove it. And recently, when I went from VanillaSoft to Agorapulse, when I went from the CRO road to the CMO job, my old team, I was doing exit interviews. I was saying my one-on-ones, and I was saying, this is what I would do if I were you. Any final words of wisdom you want from me, all that kind of stuff. And I had one of my reps ask me, and they said, Darryl, you build great teams. And it was a compliment. I was very grateful for him. And they said, what? Why? How is it you know people? How can you read them? And I'm like, dude, that's just A, that's years of experience. B, I'm a parent. And I have raised kids, and every single kid is different, and you learn to adapt. And I've had bosses, and I've had teachers, and I've had volunteer coaches, and I've had to be the good shepherd that works with all those people, and I had to adapt to them. So what that means is I learned pretty quickly to see that young woman was clearly in the company of an overpowering father. Then that man was in the presence of somebody who didn't value him, or he didn't feel heard, or he was insecure because every time he raised his voice, expressed an opinion, he was shot down. And I said, when you understand these people, then you can go to them and you can actually say, I know you're weak here. Let's work around that, because that baggage that you pick up as an individual, and we all have it. And you know it as you listen to me, because you know, as I talk to you, you know what that baggage is that you yourself are experiencing right now. It affects our ability to be peak performers. It affects our ability to achieve our goals. Said another way, the things we believe to be true, the things that we've experienced, they impact us because we're often trying to avoid it, or we're projecting that onto our prospects or onto our bosses or onto our peers. And for whatever reasons we have, it's holding us back. So it's a head thing, and we all have it. That's why the therapists make so much money, because we're messed up, kids. We're messed up. So who's really good at this stuff? Who's really good at this stuff? Well, if you follow me a lot, especially on Twitter, but LinkedIn too, there's this cat that I go back and forth on. We finish each other's sentences all the time. And I have been such a fanboy of his for so long. And I've been meaning to get him on the show. And I finally made a point of doing it. So if you've not heard of him, I don't know where you've been. You're in the woods, you're in the darkness, but you need to go check him out. His name is Ken Lundin. You can check him out at RevHeat.com. You can also go to LinkedIn, of course, and it is KG Lundin, Lundin. If you want to, he's even got his own damn website. The marketer in me loves this man, KenLundin.com. Branding 101, my friends. Ken, of Mr. RevHeat himself, welcome to the show, my friend.
No, that opening was fantastic, and I am so fired up to be here. You and I am also an ultimate fanboy of Darryl. So if we don't just gush over each other the entire session here, I think there might be some stuff that some salespeople are going to be uncomfortable with. But I think looking in the mirror, they're going to go, "Geez, that's what it is." So I'm super fired up.
All right, so let's just start with it. I gave you the opening. Now, folks, for full clarity, what we're talking about today is something that Ken is incredibly qualified, skilled, able to help you with. This is something that he does as part of his whole, all the services that he provides. And that is about belief systems, and how they're impacting you. Now, I've set the stage. Now, Ken is about to actually probably correct me on a few things I said, or affirm me in a few things I said, and we'll go from there. So, Ken, belief systems. How close was I to defining them? How would you define them? And let's talk. And then let's use some real life examples about how they're holding us back.
Yeah, I mean, it was so good. I'm going to leave. I'll see you later. So it was. The truth, I mean, it's unbelievable how we do this in sales management, sales leadership, sales people, how we think we can disconnect the individual and the individual's values and beliefs from the things that we're asking them to do. You talked, and it was awesome that you opened with the idea of the ideas that your parents had taught. And so that's a supportive belief system. What are some of the other things people have heard? So Darryl, I'll ask you now that I got you. How many bids should you get for any project?
I'm going to guess at least 3.
Well, it's usually 3. And which one do you pick?
The cheapest.
Okay, well, you go cheapest. Some people go middle. But because you said that, think about how you're going to work on if your clients or your prospects, right? My prospects are like, hey, I want to go look at other bids. You're like, internally, you're going, cool, because I always take other bids. You're going, the prospect's going, you guys are too expensive. Oh, well, that makes perfect sense to me because I always want the cheapest option. And so think about the behaviors. If I'm in sales and I'm in a moment with a prospect and they're like, hey, I want to go look at other stuff. Okay, well, when are you going to call me back?
Yep.
Instead of, hey, Darryl, well, that's interesting that you'd say that. Tell me a little bit more about why you think it's necessary to go look at other stuff. It stops you in your tracks. So yeah, I think that's a good start. I mean, the supported belief systems, that's just one of what we look at as 6 of them on whether or not you can actually execute from a sales perspective.
So I just want to interrupt here. Did you guys just see what Ken just did to me? He totally psychoanalyzed me in a matter of seconds. And that's why I'm giggling. Because right away, as soon as he said that, I started, I don't know about you, in my mind, I'm like, so why did I want the cheap one? What about me in my background makes me go to the cheap one? I know what it is because I grew up with not a lot of money. And so clearly we had to save money. So it has to be the cheap one. So, and I'm loving that because, guys, as you all know, these shows are completely unscripted. So you're watching it in action. And so if he was able to figure me out that fast with some simple questions, think what we can do for you. So let's go explore it. You said there's six aspects. Do we want to look at all 6? Do you want to look at some of them? Like, what direction do you want to go in here, sir?
Yeah, let's look at, we'll look at 2 or 3 and we'll see what happens. Because the interesting thing about your belief systems is this. It's very simple, okay? Your belief systems, and me figuring out what they are, I can predict how you'll behave in a sales process, in a sales call. Think about that. Like, it's that powerful that I can predict it. So let's start with one of them. So one of them is, do you have the need for approval? And that's messaged like this. Would you rather be liked or in some cases loved by your prospects than respected? So what do you think happens in that environment, Darryl, if I'd rather be liked or loved? What are things I will or won't necessarily maybe do in a sales call if I've got that type of personality?
Well, if you'd rather be liked or, if I understand the question right, you said, do I want to be liked or loved, or do I want to be respected? Your behaviors are going to favor your bias. And I'm not sure if this is an appropriate time to share, but one of the questions that my wife and I, on a total sidebars, but belief systems affect not only your ability to sell, it affects your ability to have a relationship. And so we periodically, in maybe 3, 4, 5 years, we go to the marriage courses. Think of it as preventive maintenance. And it's a day away, and you have some fun, and then you work on your communication. And one of the things this instructor said to us one time was, what's the difference between being loved and being respected? And they made a general statement, and again, this is marriage, guys, so I'm not saying this is for sales, but they made a statement of women predominantly want to be loved in a relationship. Men predominantly want to be respected in a relationship. So if you were to go to a man, and if my wife came to me and said, I don't love you, that would bother me. If my wife came to me and said, I don't respect you, that would crush me. And I will behave to earn her respect. So little segue, little tangent. Am I just talking to myself here, Ken, or does this support where you're going?
It's a tangent, and it may or may not. So, here's what it is. But it's okay. This is why it's unscripted. If you have a need to be liked or loved, so think about it this way: instead of respected, I'm not okay if somebody doesn't approve of me. I'm not gonna. What do you think I'm gonna do about pricing? I'm gonna give them the best price because I don't want them to think not like me because of pricing. I'm probably not going to ask the really important questions that might need to be asked. Right. Because I don't want to put them off. I may say things like this. I may say to people, well, I would never ask that question. Well, why not? Well, because I don't want to upset the prospect. So if you're listening and you're in sales and you've ever said that, think about it for a second. Holy cow, because the other thing that the sales industry has done wrong is we've manifested this ridiculous notion that people buy. That's not ridiculous, but that they buy from people they know, like, and trust. The truth is, like is the worst word to use in that case, because the way that has gone, it should be no respect and trust. Because I've got to respect you value my time and your time. So yeah, the need for approval, you can see how it might manifest those outcomes if, man, I don't want Darryl to be upset with me. It's going to lead to a lot of weakness.
So if you're a sales manager listening to this conversation, do you have a sales rep in your team right now? You've been trying to train and train and train to ask those hard questions, and they're not doing it, but they nod their head to you because, ironically, they want your approval too. All right, so you know they know it, and they're still not doing it. I'll give you a different example. It's not an approval thing, but it's a behavioral thing which ties in. Which I've been all over reps. You got to be busy and social. You got it's channel. You got to work, and they won't do it because they think it makes them look like they're vain, right? So they're insecure in that front, and that's what it comes down to. They don't understand that that's the modern way of doing business, and it's community, and it's trust, and it's relationships, and everything else. So both of those situations are affecting your rep success, even though you've coached them, which means you need to approach differently how you coach them because you need to address the root cause, which is the belief system that their need for approval, as Ken is getting at here. That's
It's the supportive beliefs. Yeah, they've heard from somebody in the way that they've come up that if you have a large social following, then it's a vanity metric. They've heard that those people are arrogant. They've heard all the negative things. So you have that supportive beliefs and the need for approval. And so what's interesting about this is, let's apply it to the real world. So social selling skills, something we measure when we do our evaluations on companies, right? So the social selling skills, they may have all the skill sets and competencies in the world, but if their core belief system believes it's vanity and believes it makes them look arrogant, and they have a need for approval, they don't want somebody to think negatively of them. Think about how those belief systems can trump all the sales competencies that you've been dealing with. So that's one of the reasons why you really have to kind of get inside. We always talk about the head trash people bring, but you got to be able to get inside somebody's mind to understand the why. You can tell me what all day. You can tell me they won't do this. You can tell me they are good at this. But can you tell me why? Because the why is how you make change in behaviors.
Okay, so how does, and I know we've got more, we're going to cover 2 or 3. We've got this, our first one, need for approval. But my question is, and maybe now is not the right time to ask, so if you want to get to this later on, let me know. How do I, as a rep, for lack of a better word, self-diagnose so that I can say, yes, you know what, I think I do need approval. And now that you mention it, I can see how that's holding me back from asking those hard questions.
Yeah, I think so. It's just that it's understanding the predictive outcomes. So I'll give you a couple of them. So one is, am I not doing things that my managers and bosses have told me that are moral, ethical, and legal? Okay, let's just make sure we classify. Am I not doing things my manager or my management staff wants me to do that are moral, ethical, and legal because it makes me uncomfortable, even though I probably logically can say that's something I should be doing. Right. And so the first thing is awareness, because the hard part about the belief systems is it's harder to change than it is to teach a skill competency. And so as a rep, you want to think about the why you won't do things. Like people have taught you how to objection handle, right? And if they've taught you how to handle objections, but you can't ask a question because you feel like it's invasive or hard to get clarification, there's some belief systems going on. If you allow, we actually have talked about 2 of them, doesn't need approval and supportive beliefs. The third one is, 3 of them is the supportive buy cycle. Like how you go about buying, and it's what I got Darryl on early, how you go about buying, like I need to price shop and I need to get this and I need to get this. That translates to, I will take think it overs and people putting me off. And I've probably, if I'm a salesperson, my potential runway of pipeline, how long I have people in the pipeline, my probably close rate is longer. So somebody we might have a 90-day close rate. Mine might be 120. I might also have less certainty when my manager's talking to me and they're walking me through my deals. I might be the one kind of like, yeah, well, Johnny said he's going to close. Right. And so if you find yourself in any of those environments, and you got to be honest with yourself, where when your manager asks you the hard questions, you're like making up some story. Those are the things that tell you, hey, there's some beliefs that are getting away of what you could do to be fantastic. And the great news is, if you have the desire, the commitment, and you're coachable, your upside is through the roof. So those are the cool things about it.
there's you're giving me so many sound bites, and I'm writing like a fiend here because I want to come back to them. So what have we talked about? We talked about the know, the like, and the trust. Understand the why. You have the desire, the commitment, and you're coachable. But a lot of this, you know, I'm a simple guy, folks. I mean, you know that already.
It's becoming more
But one of the
apparent
things
the
I've
longer we
hammered.
talk.
Yeah, this is why I like Ken. He just calls it as it is. Darryl, you're stupid. One of the things that I'm always hammering you on is how self-aware are you of your own strengths and weaknesses, and what do you value more, your ego or your commission check? And by the way, commission checks aren't necessarily bad. It's not a sign of greed, but if you value your ego more, your pride, your vanity, whatever your reputation, whatever you want to call it, that you value, that's going to hold you back from that commission check, right? It's a different way of getting at exactly what Ken's talking about here. Do you have the need for approval? So if you're not self-aware, this whole episode is going to be a waste of your time. So let me ask you that. Based on that, maybe I'm not self-aware, and it's not an ignorant self-aware. I'm just not self-aware. Would I be wise to go to a colleague or a boss and ask this, or am I better off to utilize someone like yourself and invest in my own success by having you make me aware of this? What are my options here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you can talk to people in your office, but this will be interesting unless you, first of all, here's the best way to do it. Make them listen to the show so they have context. And then say, do I exhibit any of those behaviors they spoke about in my sales process? Just that's a quick, like easy, didn't cost anyone anything, except you got to laugh a little bit because Darryl and I think we're hysterical. You may not, but that's a totally different gig. But bring them in and listen to this for context, because if you take put-offs, if you have trouble asking questions because you can't stay in the moment and be present, you have some stuff going on. And the awesome part about that is it's skills, competencies, and that kind of stuff. The way we work, and the reason why this is so, kind of prevalent in what we do, is we take more of a medical approach to how we work with sales organizations. And what I mean by that is, you say you walk into a doctor's office and literally you're in there for 30 seconds, you haven't said hello, and they start writing out a script, right? They're writing you a prescription, and you haven't told them if you have a hangnail or cancer. It's malpractice, okay? It's not a good thing. And somehow the sales consulting and training industry has gotten to this point where they go, hey, Darryl, what you need done, buddy? You want some skills-based stuff? We can teach you value over price, and we can teach you a little closing skills. And then they come in and they do a one-day event, and they're gone, and 77% of what they learned in the day forgets, and that's called the Effingham forgetting curve. So what we do is we actually take a holistic approach where we say, hey, the only way we engage with clients is by evaluating the sales force and the sales organization as a whole in order to pick out, do you have DNA problems? What are your competency stuff? How does your infrastructure and process look? So that's kind of why we go this way, is because we're really trying to figure out how to make a massive kind of outcome for our clients, as opposed to kind of working one-on-one. But listening to this show and doing what and then asking people, hey, do I do that? It's a fantastic way for an individual sales rep to figure it out.
One of the things I'll share, it's not a sales thing, but it's related, which is my last two jobs, this current job and my last job, as part of the interview process, I had to go through, for lack of a better word, I'll call it a psych eval, call it a personality test, call it whatever you want to. I'm not the doctor, but you get the idea. And that stressed me out, right? So as Ken and I here talking about, ask your colleagues, ask your bosses, engage with a professional like Ken at RevHeat. That may intimidate you, and because it intimidated me, and intimidated you for a number of reasons. What if they realize that I was just a poser? Because hey, I do have imposter syndrome. I have no problem admitting that. What if they find out some deep, dark secrets that even I may not be aware of, but it'll come out, or it might imply that I have them, even though I don't think I do, but whatever. And so I stressed hard about doing that, and I was trying to avoid it as much as possible. And it wasn't until the current CEO, when we were in the recruiting process, he really needed to get the results back before I had to farm more paperwork. and of the test. And I'm like, so just so I understand, I said, is there an outcome that you're anticipating from these results where they assess me and all of my tendencies that could cause me to lose this job? And his response was brilliant. And that's what I want you to think about this. His response was, Darryl, the job is yours. You've already got the job. He goes, what this is going to tell me is your tendencies, what you've got historically, your belief systems. And he goes, so now I know how to manage you. You've got the job. You're not losing the job. And all of a sudden, how I approached that test and the results shifted 180. And then I was excited to get the results. And I was excited to grow as a person in my craft. So that's my way of sharing a personal story, to say this is actually a really good thing, guys. You should invest in this kind of assessment, whether it's for yourself or you're a leader for your team. I love that. Okay, so we talked about the need for approval. Is there something else you want to drill down on as it relates to the belief systems?
Well, the first thing is, if you have imposter syndrome, know that generally makes you not an imposter, because imposters can't have imposter syndrome.
They have it's funny. I remember saying to my boss, and this relates to quota, but I'm new, right? So I'm the new guy in. You have the honeymoon period, and he said to me not too long ago, "How's it going?" My response, which is no different than saying, "How you doing on attaining your quota?" And my response was, "It's going well, but I feel like I'm like 3 to 4 weeks behind schedule," right? And his response was, "All the good ones always think they're behind schedule."
Yeah.
And it's a very similar statement to what you're saying. So that makes me feel good. What I think Ken just said is I'm just insecure.
That might have been it. Yeah, I don't know. We have to drilling down on a specific one. I think the idea of becoming aware of how the stuff you're bringing to the party matters. If you are somebody who price shops all the time and you go into most deals thinking price will be a problem, it becomes a problem, right? These are self-fulfilling prophecies to some extent. You think a customer's going to think you're too expensive. That usually happens at the lower end of your market, right? Because we normally sell Fortune 1000. This one's only got 250 million, so they can't spend 20 grand. If you think those things are going to happen, and the reason we talk about this is because, look, we train on all the sales competencies, and we consult on all infrastructure stuff, but we don't do it in absence of the idea of what your belief system looks like. It takes the longest to change. So if you want to be self-aware, do it early, because that's super important. Because I know my stuff as an example. It's interesting. I don't test as somebody who has the need for approval. On the other hand, I catch myself doing behaviors at certain times where I call myself out. Instead of answering the question, I'll do the. Are you always somebody? What is it? Self-deprecating. If you're making self-deprecating comments in times of tension, there's something going on there about, hey, I'm not going to be able to have a real conversation with people. And all this comes back to one real simple concept. Sales is simply mastering the art of communication, and the best communicators get the best deals. And so if you're bringing stuff between your ears that is inhibiting your ability to actually execute and become a fantastic communicator, it's worth money to be okay with saying to yourself, what if I was better at this? Would I be better in my job?
Okay, guys and gals, as you listen to that, I don't know about you, my mind is whirling because I'm already going in lots of directions. Okay, so here's where my mind goes as I listen to Ken. I'm like, okay, so let's look at my sales challenges. All right, so I like to jump into demo, and I don't like to spend a lot of time doing discovery. I don't like to multi-thread an account, mostly because I'm scared of talking to the other person, the personas, head of finance, for example, economic buyer, because I think I'm going to interrupt the day, or I don't understand them, or they're going to shoot me down. I don't want to know. I suck at negotiating, and I try to avoid it as much as possible. I don't ask for the annual commit. I'm fine with a monthly commit. I don't ask for the referral. I could go on, but I'm just thinking about some of my constant bad behaviors that I personally have to be very intentional about, because my comfort zone is not to do what I just shared.
Yeah.
a lot of that, as I listen to Ken, I can totally see how my own belief systems are holding me back, are completely holding me back. Am I connecting the wrong dots here, or am I connecting the right dots, Ken?
Oh no, you're saying it perfectly, because that's how it comes through in the sales process. What are you willing to do or won't do? What are the things that make you uncomfortable? Because it's not, and most of the time, just so here's the other question. You're not doing them because you're uncomfortable, but do you know how to do it? Because if you know
Right.
how to do it and you're not doing it, there's something else going on. So yeah, I think
Okay.
Darryl, you connected it perfectly. I mean, it's let's look at it this way. Such a low percentage of salespeople actually make quota every year. That number is going to continue to be a bad one for the foreseeable future, particularly because if you have sales DNA problems that are keeping you from actually executing on your skills, and we go into an environment where the dollar is harder to get because we're in an inflationary environment with a potential recession heading, you will have to be better at your craft to make the same money. So why do we get passionate about this stuff? We get passionate about this stuff because we're trying to protect you and your families, and we're trying to help change lives.
I think the most profound line that you've given me today, beyond making it apparent that I'm cheap, is that if I know how to do it and I'm not doing it, then there's something going on.
Yeah.
So I ask everybody listening, is there something that you know how to do that you're not doing it? So the question is why. Ken, honestly, tell me about RevHeat, because right about now, if the listeners are like me, my mind is always worrying, going, okay, I got to go to the website. I got to find more information about the belief systems. I got to see if Ken can help me or can help my team. I need to teach myself more about this. I need to overcome this. And I know we've touched on one thing that RevHeat does. You do a lot more. So
Yeah.
talk to us about RevHeat.
Yeah, the less than 2 minute version goes like this. We tend to look at sales orgs holistically through our revenue acceleration program. RevHeat works with B2B companies that are traditionally somewhere between probably 20 or 30 million, all the way up to, we have clients that are $1.5 billion. So that's kind of our client base. And with that, when we look at this revenue acceleration roadmap for them, we're really looking at three things: infrastructure and process, people and skills, and training and development, to create a holistic sales org that can be world-class in under 12 months. And so that's how we're going to go through that process. When we think about it, we are an outcome-based firm. What we do with our clients is we tell them how much money they're leaving on the table because of the current state of where the sales force is. We show them exactly how much upside. So if you're a rep looking at this, we'd give you a report and it would say you have 106% upside in the next 24 months if you'll actually get better at these skill sets, if you'll get better, if you'll change your belief system. So we are absolutely outcome based, and to show you the truth, the proof's in the pudding. Not only do we do an evaluation to start, but we also actually do that same evaluation 9 to 12 months later to figure out where the impact was. And so it's just a different way that we've looked at it, because I've been in the industry a while and used to do all the just sales coaching training stuff. And it always got to me that we're one of the few industries that doesn't intentionally try to tie ROI to spend. So we work with executive teams to figure out where are the holes, how do you fix them, and how do you make sure that they stay fixed for the long term.
So there's a couple of things that react that when Ken was talking, that I was reacting to in my mind as, a former VP of sales, a former CRO, a current CMO. It's all revenue. It's all revenue.
Yeah.
Ken was communicating very different. Did you notice that, guys? The words he used. He was very intentional with his, for lack of better words, hot buttons. That's music to my ears as an executive. When I hear Ken say, we focus on outcomes, I'm like, oh, for fudge sakes, yes. That's one simple word, right? Thank you. But my point is, that's a skill. That's a skill that Ken's learned, and he understands his buyer. And you heard him talk about working with executives to lead the company. What I would recommend you do, often I'm on here with my guests and I tell you all, you need to share this with your peers. I would recommend you take this episode and you send this to your CFO and you send this to your CEO. Not your head of sales. The head of sales already is aware of people like Ken. You go to CFO and your CEO, and you say, just give this a listen. And the reason is because the CFO and the CEO are very aware. They're about the culture of the company, especially the CEO, the culture of the company, the performance nature of the company. The CFO will always be hammering the CEO. We're spending this much money. How is the company performing? Are we hitting our results? And candidly, as Ken said, if you want skills and whatnot, you can go to him. He'll teach you, as his crew will. There's others out there, but this is more of a organizational aspect. We got to get the whole company going the same direction. So, for my money, that's what I would be doing this episode. And I bet you, your CEO and your CFO is going to listen to that, and they're going to come back to you, and they're going to say that was a brilliant share. So I'm not trying to suck up to Ken. He already follows me on Twitter, so I'm good. He may block me after this one. We shall see. But other than that, that's Ken Lundin. He is with RevHeat. Today's conversation was all about belief systems. Are they impacting you? We went at length about, do you have the need for approval as one example? Are you self-aware? Are those aspects impacting your performance and how you approach and how you engage? Do you know how to do the skills necessary, but you're avoiding doing it anyway? So it's all about understanding the why. So lots on this one. This is a little more of an intellectual one, a little more of an awkwardly uncomfortable one because it's dealing with our emotions. But, what you need to understand is that every single professional athlete has got, they have a coach for their physical skills, and they have a coach for their mental skills, right? And that's a lot of what we talked about today was truly mental skills. So I love it. It was a different topic. It was fresh. It was relevant, especially as Ken talks about as we get into a more awkward economy when the pressure is going to go up. The pressure is going to go up. You can anticipate it. So invest in yourself. Ken, thank you so much, my friend. You're awesome. Folks, again, RevHeat, Ken Lundin. You can email him at ken@revheat.com. He responds pretty damn fast. I loved it. My name is Darryl. That's another episode in the can, my friends. Take care. We'll talk to you next week.